Hello, welcome to stage. This is yours. And I just must say, before you start, Spotify is probably one of my favorite companies in the world because you
thank you.
made me have music with me all the time, always, and that I'm very thankful for. So
I
take
can't-
it away.
Thank you. I have one quick announcement from the Spotify team here. I think they've sent you all an email because they're building a collaborative playlist for later this evening. So I think they want you to add some of your favorite songs to that, and hopefully the DJ will play it. I think you don't want me to add any of my favorite songs to that playlist because I have terrible taste in music. Everyone in my team knows that. So I'm Rochelle King, and I head up design, product design, and user research at Spotify. Prior to Spotify, I was actually at Netflix, and I'm just curious how many of you here are familiar with or have used Netflix. Netflix has only been in the Nordics for a year. Okay, so that's a fair amount. Netflix is streaming video, TV, and movies, for those of you who don't know. So some of the things that I'm going to talk about today are establishing design teams in technology-driven companies. And I'm going to pull some stories from both Spotify and Netflix. At Netflix, I didn't manage just the design team, but also localization, content operations, and a number of other groups. And I think that some of the things that I'm going to talk about actually apply to establishing those kinds of teams as well. So hopefully this isn't just good for design. So let me tell you a little bit about the situation. When I joined both Spotify and Netflix, the design team was fairly underrepresented and also under-resourced. And so there's a lot of things that the design team wanted. You know, the design team wanted to be more strategic, to actually have a seat at the table, to help actually take a place in forming and shaping the strategy, maybe even identifying the things and the problems that we could solve. The design team also wanted to be solving those problems holistically. So what happened was that a lot of ideas and solutions were kind of cooked up in the product organization, and design was brought in at the very end just to lay on that nice visual layer, that visual polish. And so they really wanted to be involved in solving the problem from start to finish and really thinking about the whole user experience and what the whole customer journey really looked like. And I want to say something here, because what it sounds like is it's like the design team whining to be more powerful and whining to be more important. But I actually believe that it's not really just good for the design team, it's actually good for the company. Because the best products are actually built with three really strong partners, technology, product, and design, all having equal seats at the table, but all respecting, you know, the different areas of expertise that each of those brings. And if any one of those legs is weak, then the table can fall down. So it's actually not just important to have strong design for strong design's sake. It's actually important to have strong design, strong products, strong technology, all equally participating. So, yeah, thank you. So, you know, I think that when people come in and try to, you know, change things around, there's this one technique that you can use, which is you come in and you say, this is all wrong, and you throw it all away, and you try to dictate how it should be. To be honest with you, that actually wouldn't work very well for me. That's not my style. I have to admit that it probably also wouldn't have worked at some of those companies because design wasn't necessarily respected, and it hadn't yet earned the trust of the organization for someone new to just come in and start dictating what we should be doing. So my approach was to actually understand and align, and it's around four things. It's around what matters to the business, how are decisions being made, what principles can be established and shared, and then finally, what kind of people do you need? So we'll talk about each of these in a little bit more detail. So what matters to the business? I think there's lots of ways that you can articulate what matters to the business, whether it's a mission statement or something like that. At Spotify and Netflix, they're both sort of data-driven companies, and so metrics is the way that we sort of articulate what's important to the business. So at Spotify, which is a consumer-facing product company, like most others out there, we use engagement, daily active users over monthly active users. And what that actually gets you is a sense of how sticky your product is, how often are people coming back and using it on a regular basis. But when you go to a designer and you say, hey, we're going to come up with ideas for increasing engagement, you can actually get a huge range of ideas, very, very broad. And it's actually not really the best way to always align people because you need something a little bit more concrete. So one thing that we did was to work very closely with the analytics team, and we came up with this notion of what is actually the behavior that we are trying to drive. Well, Spotify is a streaming music service. So if you're not actually playing songs when you're using the product, you've completely failed. And so we said, you know, it's really, really important to think about getting people to play more songs. So how many songs played is actually going to be the important metric for us to kind of rally around and think about. And hopefully getting people to play more songs is actually a proxy metric for how to actually drive more engagement. And when you start to speak in these more concrete terms, it gets the designers and the other product folks a little bit more able to think of ideas that are more concrete and more aligned. And we can actually target this even more. Because if I say to you, think of ideas that get you to play 30 songs a day, increase that to 40 songs a day, you'll come up with a couple of different ideas for what kinds of features or products those might be. But if I said to you, we actually need to increase the number of early adopters and get people playing from 0 songs to 5 songs, you probably come up with different kinds of product ideas and different kinds of feature ideas. So this is a way that we can really concretely articulate what it is that we want to change and how we can get designers and product folks to think about it. But this trick is not something that I learned at Spotify. It's actually something that I pulled from Netflix. So Netflix is a subscription business. And for Netflix, the most important thing was retention and getting people to renew their subscriptions month over month. Again, retention, very hard to think about. How did I move that? How is it that this feature is going to change my behavior 1 month from now when I need to pull out my credit card and pay for it? So we said hours watched is going to be the way that we really rally the team to think about that's the metric that we want to do. Is the more hours that you watch of Netflix on a monthly basis, the more value you probably get from that product, and the more likely you are to renew your subscription. So I'm going to tell you a little story here. This is what the Netflix homepage looked like in 2009 when I first joined. This is a mock-up. You can see all this lorem ipsum language on it, but this is basically what it looked like. And the design team for about a year had been trying to get the Netflix team, the product team, to actually change this to make it something that was more engaging, cinematic, immersive, beautiful, all of those things. And they actually had mock-ups created and were trying to sell it, but it really wasn't going anywhere. If you look at the Netflix homepage today, you'll actually see that it is a little bit more immersive. It does use these full bleed color, these full bleed photos, and actually the top one is actually a video where she kind of sits up, looks around a little bit, and lies back down. And so what happened that allowed these kinds of designs to be able to get built compared to the fight that was going on, 4 years ago, 3 years ago, when I had first joined Netflix? Well, when we redesigned the Netflix homepage, the instructions that I gave to the design team were, hey, you know that we care about increasing hours watched, so come up with designs that will increase the number of hours watched. And they're all great designers, so I don't need to tell them to make it beautiful or to make it epic or any of those things, but they just started talking about those designs a little differently. And they would say, hey, my hypothesis is that by presenting and showcasing this content in a very, cinematic way, with a video that actually gets you more of a feeling for what that content might be, it'll increase the number of people who are interested in playing that content. And so they started to just speak differently about their designs, very similar designs, but they're just starting to talk about it in a way that resonates with the rest of the business. And by the way, I'm not going to forget to put the bright red button on there that says play. Right, because that was one of the problems with the original designs, is that people were forgetting to put play buttons on there. And of course, product management is like, well, how's this going to help me? It's a nice photo, but you don't want to dirty it up with a play button. Well, so that's the kind of thinking that started to happen. Okay, so that's why instead of talking about what matters to design, talking about what matters to the business and trying to get designers to articulate what's important to them relative to those terms can be really important. Okay, the second thing, how are decisions made? So every company has a way of deciding things. And so there's the person who yells the loudest. If you work in this company, you just make sure you yell really loud, and then you'll get the things to go your way. There's the hippo. Do you know what this is? It's the highest paid person's opinion. So if you work in a company where that matters, then you make sure that you're best friends with the CEO and that they really like you and that they want to listen to your opinion. So at Netflix and Spotify, we use something that we call consumer science, but it is basically data-driven. It's using surveys, data, user research, and also A/B testing to help make decisions. How many of you are familiar with A/B testing? Most. A/B testing, just really quickly, is when you take a small segment of the population and put them into a different experience relative to the rest of the population. And by doing that, you can actually measure which of those two experiences performed better or worked better. And then we go back to the metrics. That's how we judge whether or not it performed better or was more successful. So usually, designers are allergic to hearing about data-driven environments because they feel like it's taking away some of the art and the creativity around design. But what I try to remind them of is that actually data is people, right? It's actually just a reflection of human behavior, right? And we want to think about what is the behavior we're trying to drive, and then let's measure that to see if we were actually successful or not. Now, I'm going to tell you a story about the PS3. So this is the original Sony PlayStation 3 design for Netflix. It had a number of problems and a number of issues with it. What design always wanted to do was try to come up with high concept ideas and do very, very broad thinking on how could we redesign this. But Netflix at that time was a little bit more comfortable with changing just one variable at a time. So you would never be able to execute on these high concept ideas if you were operating in a data-driven framework where you can only change one variable at a time. So we went back to the core question of how can we increase the number of hours watched. And what the design team pitched was large-scale concept A/B testing. So it's a combination of the way that decisions were being made in the company already, and then adding conceptual design to that. So I'm going to walk through these quite quickly, just because this is not really the point of this presentation. But we did 4 different test cells. This one was around hierarchical browsing. And this is supposed to be a movie that's playing. We'll see if it happens. But anyways, the notion is that to browse the tens of thousands of movies and TV shows by having a menu that you can drill into, or by having box shots that you can scroll through, that would be a way to give you complete control and complete ability to browse the entire catalog. Let's see. That's not me. I'll start telling you about the second one just because I've got 8 minutes left here on the clock. The second one was actually about simple menu structure. So we were saying that, oh, that was too complex. Let's try to do something simplified. And so I'm going to assume that the people up in the booth are going to try to click to the next slide. Because I can't, because this doesn't seem to be working. So there was another test cell that was like, hey, let's do something really, really simple. And take away all of those structures, there it is, and not have it be something that you drill, but just that focusing on the box art. And that's how you're going to get people to watch more hours, because it's so simple to use. The third idea was that people mostly know what genre they want to browse into. So take away the distraction of the box charts, make it a step-by-step process, and that's going to be even more guided, even more directed. That'll get people to watch more. I'm going to click to the next one anyways. And the fourth one was, hey, you know what? This is a PS3 in someone's living room, so why not just try to recreate something that feels more familiar to them, that typical lean-back TV, linear TV experience. And maybe by accident, you'll find something that's interesting to you and therefore just start to watch more. So it was great because actually the design team was able to create these 4 very different large-scale concept ideas, pitch it to the company in a way that we could work within the decision-making framework that already existed. So this story wouldn't be complete if I didn't have you vote. We'll go quickly. How many think cell 1 won? Performed the best? Wow. Cell 2? Cell 3? Some? Cell 4? Oh! There we go. Cell 4. So cell 2 is actually the one that won. And I think that what's interesting is if you looked at this audience, you know, if we were just yelling the loudest, there actually would be a lot of yelling because people disagreed, right, about what was working or not. And even within the company, there's a lot of disagreement about which one would perform the best. Actually, the engineers and product owners liked Cell 4 the best because they were so precious about this amazing fast startup video, technology that they created for it. So I think it was really good for both the designers to learn how they could validate their own instincts using A/B testing, but also for the company to see how design could push the existing framework of A/B testing. Okay, third one, what principles can be established and shared? And so these 2 stories that I just told you, this is my cheesy animation, you'll have to forgive me, was about product and technology sort of telling design how we work and then bringing design into alignment with that. Right, but this can go both ways. Design can also get better about articulating what's important for design and explaining that to product and technology using language that matters to them and then bringing them into alignment with design. So this is what we did with defining principles. It creates this common language that we can all use. It also helps to guide the day-to-day conversations and actually helps us raise the bar because these are principles that you want to live by, so they are somewhat aspirational. I'm going to show you 6 Spotify principles, and you're going to feel like the product doesn't necessarily reflect those yet, but that's why. It's because they're aspirational, so it gives us something to shoot for. So here's the Spotify design principles. I'm going to bare my soul a little. This is what Spotify looks like right now. It's actually kind of a mess. How did we get here? Well, we grew really fast, and we were evolving all the time. We were creating these independent solutions that sometimes just didn't fit and sometimes just don't feel right. And so we introduced these 6 principles to the whole company. 1, content first. And for each of these principles, you're going to see that they're articulated in a way that is something about something that's important to design, something about music, which we all care about, and then you'll see how it reflects to the business. So again, if we're a music company, it has to be about music. You can't have any question in your mind when you open the app that it's not a music application. Be alive. Music has a beat. I'm going to go back to engagement. Engagement is coming back on a regular basis. If you feel like your application or your product is alive and there's a reason to come back day after day, you're more likely to return, so that can help to drive engagement. Third one is do less. Music should feel effortless. If we really want to be a product that's used worldwide, it needs to be easy. That's going to help us with growth. The fourth one, get familiar. Music is a personal expression. The more that you actually feel affinity to a product and feel like it's a personal expression of yourself, the more likely or the less likely you are to switch to a competitor when they come out, because you feel some kind of personal affinity with that brand. Stay authentic. You know, it's important to always have the trust of your customers so that when you launch new things, they feel like it's in their interest as well as yours. And the last one is lagom. Sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, but you know, it's to be balanced, right? Because we could go crazy on being alive and there's animated GIFs everywhere, but that's not going to be a great experience. So it's, the craft is actually in balancing all of these. So let's kind of quickly go into these. This is actually what the sign-up process looked like just a couple months ago. And we said, how can we apply the principle of do less to this? So this is what we did. And if you expand this, you'll see that there's 4 screens there talking about the product. And in those 4 screens is actually a video, which gets us be alive. And so this is how we sort of applied those principles to the design of the product. And what happened was sign-ups and installs actually went up by quite a bit. So what's nice here is that we're actually validating our design principles with the metrics that actually matter to the business. Oh, thank you. You're nice to me. I like you. That's like asking for applause. Okay, this is very short. The last one, what kind of people do you need? I do think people matter, right? And you need to think about what is the team, what is the product that you want 2 years from now, and do you have the right team in place to get there? So sometimes you need to take the existing folks and actually teach them new skills. Sometimes you need to hire in people who are filling gaps that exist in your team, right? And you think about, I need to retrain that violin. It's like an orchestra. You know, I need some brass instruments, right? I need to take my violinist and retrain them to play cello, right? So that we can actually get this nice mix. So that's, I think, really important to be aware of and thinking more about, rather than the team you have, the team that you need to be. And so for us, given what I've just talked about, it is important for us to start. For us, it was important to start finding people who are curious about the business, or to teach the existing team more about what was important to the business. And the other thing was having people who weren't intimidated by data and thought data is a friend, because that is one thing that's not going to change about the company. So I found that it's important when working in a data-driven organization to make sure that the folks that we hire have an appreciation for that and see it more as a tool that they can use rather than something that they're a victim to. So I think that that people factor is actually probably the underlying foundation that is really going to be the most important thing that makes you successful or not. So just in conclusion, 2 things, right? Understanding and aligning. And what I just talked about today were 4 things, but those are just many, many of the tools that you can use. You can use principles, you can use data, you can use metrics. Those are all things that you could use. Ultimately, though, it has to be your choice, because you have to do something that resonates with you and will work with you. Otherwise, you'll fail. And so I think that that's the most important thing to keep in mind, right, is trying to structure the organization, trying to find that understanding alignment, but making sure that it still resonates with you in the end. That's it. Thank you. Right on time.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
No, it's thank you so much.
Yep.
And it's sort of, I could be here for a very long time listening to you talking about music and about Spotify.
But you know what? It's so much better to listen to music than to just talk about it, right?
Okay, well, let's do that. Isa, take it away.